Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast for the first proper rest day recap. The transition day from Denmark or travel day didn't count. We will recap all the GC standings and all the jersey competitions, preview the second week to come, the 6 stages, I think it is, or 5 stages, as well as talking about has Wout van Aert already won green? What can Jumbo-Visma do to dethrone Pogacar, or Ineos rather, as well as doing a wrap-up of the Giro Donne, which concluded yesterday. But thanks, as always, to Zwift for supporting the podcast. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at Lanterne Rouge CP, because on Alpe d'Huez Day, we will be doing an LRCP Zwift club ride. And the point of the club's functionality in Zwift is it's much more like spontaneous. You join the club, and you can, if we just want to go for a ride, you can join. It's not like events signing up to those. So follow us on Twitter. We'll have information there probably that morning or the evening before. We'll have an Alpe d'Huez ride, which might be at a friendly time for our friends in Oceania, Americans and Canadians. I'm afraid it might not be. But Tour de France Femmes is coming. Stage 21 is when it kicks off for the men's race. It's beforehand. It's actually at a really good time because the men's race finishes ridiculously late. If you want to catch the women's race, you will be able to. It kicking off, it should be a barnstorming sprint between Elisa Balsamo, whether Charlotte Kool is leading out Lorena Wiebes. We'll discuss that in the Giro Donne recap as well. So make sure you pin it in your diaries. Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift kicks off on the 24th of July. But now we'll move on to the Giro Donne recap, 10 stages. If you didn't catch it, we ended our last recap after stage 3. I thought Cesena stage would be a Marianne Vos reduced sprint stage. Incorrect. Stage 4, Van Vleuten went on the attack, won the stage, and went into the leader's jersey, the Maglia Rosa, which she would not relinquish the next day. Reggio Emilia. It was a sprint with like a left-hand bend with 200 meters to go. Yeah. Charlotte Kool was neck and neck with Balsamo. It was kind of like the Cohn Bowman Maro Schmidt corner, except at much higher speed. And Balsamo kept her position inside and then went through the corner ahead of Kool and was able to beat her in the sprint, although Kool came to her front wheel very, very quickly. Marianne Vos on stage 6, it was like a punchy Bergamo finish where Van Vleuten actually was caught up by a crash and Vos won the reduced sprint. Stage 7, pure climbers finished to Passo della Maniva. Juliette Lebeau proved once again that on like a long extended climb, she's very light, very skinny. She won the Vuelta a Burgos GC by holding on against following on Laguna Stenaya. She won that stage. AVV again keeping the jersey and going on the attack again on stage 8 where she crashed on the descent. Got back up and still won the stage. She locked up going into a right-hand bend, went straight and just tipped it over the front, but she seemed fine. The next day, Christian Faulkner won from the break, her second stage after winning the prologue. AVV actually came under attack from Cavalli, aided sort of like Longo Borghini. Cavalli attacked her on the descent. She'd actually dropped Mavi Garcia in previous stages, moved into second on GC. And she actually beat Van Vleuten on the stage, although the break won, but it just wasn't very much time. Van Vleuten already had, I think, like a minute 50 lead on her in GC. And then the next day was won by Chiara Consoni. It was very reminiscent to me of the last Tirreno Adriatico sprint, where all the big favorites, big favorites like Kopecky, Kool, and Balsamo, they all kind of got tangled up. And then Consoni and Barbieri just sprung clear, the two Italians. And great to see Valcar win, the Italian team. They all went completely crazy afterwards in their pink kits. Consoni this year has been an absolute weapon. This is her no, she won Bulls Ladies Tour stage back in the day. This is her first Giro Rosa stage win, her biggest win ever. But in terms of GC, AVV takes it ahead of Marta Cavalli on 152. Garcia cracked a bit. She came in third on 556. Longo Borghini 645. Neve Fisher-Black took the Young Riders jersey on 1112. She was the best SD Works rider. AVV took points because Balsamo didn't do well enough in the final sprint by 2 points out of Balsamo. Faulkner won KOM, Fisher Black Youth, and FDJ teams. I think AVV just did the business, Benji. There's nothing really. But she wasn't as dominant as one would think. Like Cavalli, I know it's 152, but it's not 5 minutes either.
Exactly. So Cavalli seems to have been better than I probably anticipated before this race started. She's got a good result out of this. I think when it comes to Van Vleuten, she did have that crash, but I'd argue that I expected a bigger, or like, I think the biggest difference happened on that one stage, the raid stage, where Van Vleuten went early. Was it the Chasina stage? Like, I mean, like, I expected more stages where she was dominant, if that makes sense. And perhaps it's because breakaways won on certain stages, like the Labou one and the Faulkner one. Like, that's a scenario that's possible. And then you start thinking about those riders like Faulkner, for example. She's won the prologue, she's won that breakaway stage as well, or at least, like, it's not like she's solely a breakaway rider. She can climb very goddamn well. And you start asking yourself, was she chained for Amanda Spratt too long at the start of this race? Should she have been the number one candidate for that team for GC in the first place? And when it comes to Labou, you have a stage where she loses 11 minutes in that chase in a stage, the raid stage for Van Vleuten, and you're questioning, is that because she can't handle those medium mountain stage chaos stages too well? And if that does not happen in the Tour de France from that chaos stage where everything blows up, compared to the pure mountain stage where she might be better, should she go for GC or should she go for KOM? And I lean more towards GC than KOM because I believe she can top five the Tour de France Femme.
It depends on the climbs, but yeah, like difficult for DSM a bounce. I think they're taking Lippert for punchy style finishes. They're taking, are they taking Charlotte Cool when they've got Lorena Wiebes? If they have her as lead out, that would be ridiculous. Maybe they won't. They've got Wiebes in her sprints train. And then Labou, yeah, should she freelance GC? Will Lippert go for GC? I don't know. It's Labou's French. I think she should go for GC. I agree with you. On Movistar, Jelena Erich was pretty good for Van Vleuten.
Yeah.
Sierra's good. But again, in the finals, I do think it's. I'm be interested to see whether Ludwig, Music, and Chapman, if there's ever a possibility that they're in a group with Cavalli and AVV has no teammates. I think that sort of situation is possible. It must be said that the second best GC contender in the world wasn't here, at least in my view, Demi Vollering. So
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't SD Works' best team. Blanca Vash, a little bit like she's not been that good this year. I don't know what's. She's young, so who knows? Like you can't expect. She's only 20 years old, but
Yeah.
she came fourth in World's Road Race last year, and she's a super talent. And she was at the Giro Rosa, and yeah, like not really competitive. Like on that Bergamo finish, not competitive. So I don't know what's going on there. But do you think Vollering? Like, do you think Vollering can actually mount a fight against AVV Benji? Because I have Vollering above Cavalli.
I have Vollering slightly above Cavalli as well. My issue with SD Works is not necessarily that I don't think Vollering's not good enough. I don't trust their cooperation with their perhaps multiple leaders. Like, will Molman and Vollering be able to work together well in the Tour de France? Will they ride for each other? Because we've seen occasions where that did not occur too well in the past, in the preseason, for example. So it's Molman's last year. Will she be willing to drop everything in Domestique for Vollering in the mountains? I don't know the answer to that. And I lack the confidence in SD Works teamwork, if that makes sense.
And they've got Kopecky here as well, who's arguably their best rider. Like, she won Tour of Flanders, Strada Bianca, second at Roubaix this year. There's some stages in the first 3 to 4 stages that really, really suit
Yeah.
her, although she came away empty handed at the Giro Rosa. She actually hasn't won a road race since Vuelta a Burgos at the start of May, although still going pretty well. But yeah, her sprint wasn't as fast as Vos or Cool here. at all. She's actually looking more the punchy style than the pure sprints. In the pure sprints, she couldn't. She came fourth twice. They were her best results. Like Vos cooled Balsamo much faster. So yeah, that's a difficult balance, Benji. I don't actually. I kind of agree with you. I don't really hold out much hope for ST Works. I think the best chance, like AVV, is the prohibitive favorite for GC, the Tour de
Yeah.
France Femme avec Zwift. This race doesn't change that. If she'd crashed out on that crash and had a mechanical and lost 3 minutes, wouldn't change my opinion on that. It does reinforce, as we saw in Olympics road race, that she's really her own worst enemy. If she pushes a descent too hard and crashes, that's the single biggest chance of her losing GC. Nothing else. Because like you can try tactics in one day races, which SD Works have done, where you won tour, that's fine. That doesn't work as well in GC because yeah, you might win the sprint, but you're not gapping her. She'll just ride tempo behind you, and on some stage she'll eventually get you. So yeah, I I still think she's the prohibitive favorite for GC. Voss is looking really good. I don't know. I think Voss might be able to take the first stage, Benji. I'm not sure how technical it is. Probably not that technical, but her lead out was looking pretty good. Um, I don't know, but then Viva's just when she does race, just
Yeah.
makes everyone look so slow.
Ribis wins in first stage, or Balsamo. It's one of the two. I don't know. It's Balsamo's the closest. Balsamo's literally the only sprinter I see beating Ribis if Ribis stays on the bike.
Yeah, she's the only one that has beaten her
Yep.
in like the last year and a half, unless Vibas has crashed. So I think I would say about the Giro Donne, it had better coverage this year. I hear rumors that RCS are sniffing around the race, wanting to have their own competitor to the Tour de France Femme avec Zwift, trying to get their act together because as you despite sharing a similar name, RCS, who own the Giro d'Italia, do not own the Giro Donne. It's actually owned by a different company, and coverage has been a bit patchy. But it's the historical longest race. That it's obviously been going longer than the Tour de France Femme, which hasn't started yet. I would say competing against the first week of the Tour de France is a battle you are never going to win for exposure. We saw that with ourselves this week. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, we try our best, but at the end of the day, the Tour de France men's race first week literally pays, well, the Tour de France pays the bills for the teams, for all the media. Like, it is the biggest show in town, and going against that, I know the stages finish earlier in the day, it is very difficult, and I wonder if they need to wiggle with the calendar because Benji, there's that week after Swiss. Why not have it there? And then there's a bit of a gap between this race, like a normal gap between this race and Tour de France Femme avec Zwift rather than 2 weeks. I would have this race between Swiss and the start of the men's tour.
Yeah, I don't like it being here in general. Like, I feel like it's so close to the Tour de France Femme as well in general, so that it feels less special to have Grand Tours when all of them are like packed in 1 month.
2 weeks apart.
Exactly. It's too close for me personally. And like you said, it's during the first week of the Tour de France, arguably one of the busiest weeks of our year. And obviously, I shouldn't be the reason that the race is being moved, but this is not just us. This is the industry. The industry is bloody busy in the first week of the Tour de France, the entire pro cycling industry. And I swear I had to catch up to the Giro Donne stages sometimes at 1 a.m. at night. So it's it's crazy to have this during the biggest race in the year. As in the same way that I would not be watching a Tour de Pologne or even, I don't know, like,
We're not covering Tour de Pologne this year because the Tour de France Femme avec Zwift is taking priority. The Tour de France Femme avec Zwift finishes, it tacks on another week to this coverage, and then Pologne starts straight after. And we've decided we're not doing it. Like, it's just at a point in the calendar where everyone needs a break from cycling. We need a break, and so we're not doing it. It's unfortunate for the race, but it is what it is. And so, yeah, I think regardless of everyone's best intentions, the media has limited bandwidth or resources, and yeah, there's expectations on maximizing coverage during the tour. That being said, I do think the race seemed to be, well, the coverage was better. Like when I wanted to catch up on replay, I still had to um, I could catch up on GCN Racing or and so it's moving in the right direction. Whether RCS taking over it, if that does indeed happen, if those rumors were even true, would that be better for the race? Not sure. But I do think they're probably going to try and move it in the calendar. But otherwise, Consoni Benji, the last thought from a race perspective, she won Dwars Tour Vleuten this year, so I shouldn't have said she didn't win a World Tour race. I know it's not World Tour, but it was a pretty good level win. She's the next Balsamo, right? Valcar rider, 23, winning well. She got a contract at Valcar next year. What team, if any, if she wants to move up, what team needs a sprinter like that? Because Trek is stock full. Is it, do SD Works need a pure sprinter? Because I reckon with the lead out, is she quicker than Kopecky?
I think she's quicker than Kopecky with a lead out. I think Kopecky has never been the pure sprinter, so that's how I see Consoni being better. But leaving after 2023, Jesus, you're testing my knowledge of which contracts end in the next 2 years in women's cycling, and that's basically 90% of the contracts in women's cycling. So every single team could need a sprinter at that point. So I don't know. I don't know. I'd have to check. I generally can't tell you yet.
I don't know what Voss plans are. Her contract at Jumbo ends at the end of 23. I don't know what her plans are. But yeah, like someone will be going hard for Chiara Consoni at the end of
Movistar
2023.
has
Yes.
Norsgaard, but Van Vleuten's leaving there,
Norsgaard,
so they're gonna be
not a,
needing
she's
strength.
like Kopecky light, right?
Yeah,
She's yeah,
Kopecky light.
yeah. Um, so yeah, Consoni's just one to watch for. She'll be like maybe the next Balsamo. I mean, that's a high threshold world champion, but
Yeah,
she's
yeah.
really, really, really good. So watch out for her in the future. But that was our rest day recap. We hope it was helpful for you. Kristen Faulkner, she came to cycling late. She's won 2 stages of the Giro Rosa. The women's bike exchange team is absolutely flying right now. Hopefully, that she does the same when they win more stages of the Tour de France Femme avec Zwift. But yeah, that's all from us. Stay tuned for our Stage 10 recap of the men's tour tomorrow. Ciao.